Hi there, Professor Chris here, and welcome to another video brought to you by TARMA, and that's Threat Assessment and Risk Mitigation Advisors. Today we are going to look at the second half of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute threat assessment, but we're focusing on the context it lends to what would be a client's threat assessment. So we're just sort of getting some context from the Dana-Farber one. But before this really trips my brain out, I'm going to get started. So we were looking at the potential threat element and whether or not, whether or not an actual threat existed, which we would discover through the course of our research. Then we would look at the history of the past attacks or attempts and the intent behind them, because we know past is prologue, right? Or in a nerdier way of saying it, um, that's where the predictive algorithms come from. So then we look at the past uh, means that people have used to target them and attack. And then we look at the vulnerabilities. First, we identify the vulnerabilities, which are varied. And this is all based on this primary, right? So obviously a client's threat assessment isn't going to look the same unless it falls into the category of the HPH or healthcare and public health sector. So then we look at why this asset needs protection, aside from the fact that because our clients told us so, or they're trying to determine whether it does. Common vulnerabilities, just one-of-the-mill everyday stuff. Then we have critical infrastructure known risk, vulnerability, number one, theft, cyber attack, incendiary devices, etc. Again, those are specific to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. However, I mean, there's nothing saying that those wouldn't affect any asset, but it's all about context, right? I mean, if some person who's got some proprietary information and he or she is worried about a disgruntled employee getting their hands on that information, obviously, that would be a cause for alarm, and that would be something that we'd want to look into. And then we do a vulnerability assessment. We look at the motivations, capabilities, and tactics of the past, which I could have gone into more. Um, I could have gone into more detail here, and I would for a customer or for a client. Vulnerabilities that are most likely to be exploited. Obviously, that goes without saying. Vulnerability level. And then finally, we have part three, the criticality assessment and countermeasures. Countermeasures, of course, being recommendations for prevention of loss of life or assets. And what would happen around the area where the primary was located. Examining the human and economic impacts of a terrorist attack at the DFCI and the impact of public confidence. So obviously that means the people and the money, of course, it's Boston, right? But then the impact of public confidence. So what is the people, what are the people doing who are responsible to not traumatize the locals or the country? I mean, shit. Let's see what else. And I'm just going through those because they're not relevant to, I mean, they might be relevant to the client, but we don't know that. We have criminal and civil legal liabilities, obviously. We live in probably the most litigious country in the world. Um, the likelihood that this asset will experience an attack. And this threat rating comes from the calculations of all the different things combined. Vulnerability, whether or not there's enough security in place to avoid an attack. Consequence rating, and then countermeasures being our recommendations. And then finally the reference pages, which I am immovable on. You don't want me to include the reference pages in your document, that's fine. Um, but I will create them because I'm not creating them. Anyway, that's enough on me. Thank you so much, and take care of yourselves. Please reach out if you are interested. You want to have a conversation or you want a free consultation. We don't charge for any of that initial contact stuff. So, um, our motive, if you will, is just to keep people safe and make some money along the way. So there you go.